today to register for the course and secure your online seat. Financial aid and one-on-one business coaching options are available. Visit THEBIZCTR.com for more information and to register for the online business plan course today. Secure your online seat now. The new start date is February 1st. WURD members get 10% off the business plan course. Just use code WURD10 at checkout.
The Sports Segment. Tune in to Wake Up with Word Mondays as Solomon Jones discusses all things sports with Shamar Woods, Director of Digital Sports for The Inquirer. Every Monday on Wake Up with Word, exclusively on WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD. Independent Black Media. This is not a fad for us.
We will not resume our regular programming when things die down. We're not black to help our bottom line or because it's politically correct. We're not joining a fight. This has been our fight, our message, our people. Black lives have always mattered here. We are
Undeniably,
indefatigably, unapologetically, permanently Black Talk Media.
WURD.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent Black Media.
Show. It comes to you every Saturdays from the hours of 1 to 2 o'clock. On today's edition of the show, this is Black History Month. Who was or who is Hubert Harrison? A giant of an intellectual, a writer, an activist who fought intensely, fiercely for the liberation of black people in this country and all over the world. Dr. Jeffrey Perry has written so many books about this great intellectual, and he's with us today to share his knowledge about this great intellectual. Our number here is 215-634-8065. If you want to have any questions, if you have any questions for Dr. Perry, he's here to share his writings. He's an autobiographer. He wrote a book, two volumes actually, on Hubert Harrison. Our number here is 215-634-8065. Was Hubert Harrison, Dr. Perry, a contemporary of W.E.B. Du Bois?
Yes, he was a contemporary of Du Bois, and his relationship to Du Bois is very interesting. He starts out in his youth as what he calls a Du Bois man in the debate between Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. Booker T. Washington was considered very conservative, and Du Bois was considered more progressive. But by 1910, he's distancing himself from Du Bois, specifically over concepts like Du Bois' concepts that the talented tenth must be made leaders of culture and education of the Negro people. He didn't think that line should be pushed, if you will, because they had not exerted the leadership that was needed. He thought the talented tenth should come down from what he phrased as their Mount Sinai's and get amongst the people. And he also didn't appreciate the concept with the notions of what was implicit in white blood in some of the talented tenth, what constituted the talented tenth. By 1912, he and Du Bois are in the Socialist Party, but Du Bois leaves the Socialist Party to support Woodrow Wilson. Harrison stays in campaigns for Du Bois. Now, Woodrow Wilson would quickly segregate all the federal workers and departments. He would invade Haiti, Santo Domingo, go into the Virgin Islands. He'd bring the movie The Birth of a Nation into the White House. And by the last part of his second term, he would lead the U.S. into a war to, quote, make the world safe for democracy. Now, Harrison took issue with lots of that stuff, but most importantly, and where the lines of demarcation were strongest with Du Bois, were regarding World War I. The U.S. Woodrow Wilson leads the U.S. into the war to make the world safe for democracy. Harrison founds his organization, the Liberty League, and his newspaper, The Voice. They are the first organization and first newspaper of the new Negro movement in 1917. And at the founding rally, and he puts forth demand, instead of let's make the world safe for democracy, let's make the South safe for democracy.
So he was more interested in the Southern situation more than the global issue. We have a call here from Francis from Colorado.
He didn't believe Wilson had any intention to make the world safe.
I see. We're going to go to Francis from Colorado, Dr. Perry. Francis, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, Dr. Emeka and Dr. Perry. I have two quick questions for Dr. Perry. What was Hubert's position on birth control with regard to African Americans? And then what were his major disagreements with Marcus Garvey?
We just finished.
If there were any.
What was the second question?
Marcus Garvey. I'm sorry, Francis. Go ahead and explain yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, the major disagreement he had with Marcus Garvey.
Marcus Garvey, and then the abortion. What is it? The birth control thing. Is that right?
Birth control.
Very good questions. I'm going to be brief, but regarding birth control.
Thank you, Francis.
Yes, thank you, Francis. Harrison was an advocate of birth control, but he was very wary of the improper uses it would be put to, and he explained that, right? So he thought it should be something that people should be entitled to, but not to be used as a genocidal practice amongst particularly African-American women. So he was kind of advanced in that period, but he would speak on it. Regarding Garvey, it's a very interesting relationship, which people are going to want to read Volume 2 to get the full depth of what goes on between Harrison and Garvey. But I'll just point out some highlights. Harrison introduces Garvey to his first major public speaking event in Harlem at one of Harrison's events in 1970, first major one. Garvey joins Harrison's Liberty League. For those familiar with Garvey, he's not one to join anyone else's organization.
Correct.
But he joins Harrison. He was a follower of Harrison at first. But things go different ways, which I'm not going to go into right now. But Harrison's organization doesn't continue to grow for a period of time, and Garvey starts building his own organization, which also struggles. But by 1919, after an assassination attempt on Garvey and some skyrocketing sales of tickets for his Black Star Line, et cetera, in late 1919, he's in much better financial shape, and he approaches Harrison to see if he would like to lead, Harrison would like to lead a school that Garvey was planning to establish in Africa. And Harrison, that was right before the end of the year, 1919. Harrison says, well, give me a little time to think about this. Big problem for Harrison, amongst others, was that coming from St. Croix, he had the status of citizen but not of the United States. This is how the United States treated black Crucians, black people from the Virgin Islands, a very complicated and unequal status compared to other. Yeah, so I won't go into that right now. But then when Harrison comes up to see Garvey again, Garvey says, I want you to work at the Negro World. And he did that because Harrison was recognized as the finest journalist in the black press in that period. And Harrison goes to start working at the Negro World, and he quickly becomes the managing editor throughout much of 1920. And in his diary, and in my second volume, my book, he details, and this is particularly from the notes in his diary, all the changes he implements at the paper, from how he handles headlines and people citing their names for articles, to bringing West Indian news notes and poetry for the people, and just the political content of the publication.
Right.
And the Negro World sweeps the globe in 1920 in the period under Harrison's editorship. Now, Tony Martin has written a wonderful book on literary Garveyism, and he writes about how the Negro World was a literary and a political publication, particularly around that 1920 period. But he did not know, unfortunately, that Harrison was the editor because so much of the Harrison record. But it was Harrison, because Harrison's political and he's literary. But then after he's working for a number of months with Garvey, and after he defends Garvey against some of the black socialists, and he defends Garvey because he says Garvey holds up racialism, race consciousness, and race solidarity amongst the Negro people, amongst to some of the socialists who seem to be denying racial factors, if you will, in some of the work they're doing. But then he has a close up-hand look at Garvey, and he elaborates a number of criticisms, which are elaborated in the book, and I encourage you to get the book or get it from a library. But they include things like how Garvey, handles money around the Liberian construction loan, Black Star Line, how he doesn't speak truthfully in many of his proclamations to the people, how he doesn't work well with his, quote, subordinates, he doesn't utilize their talents. And Harrison has a number of criticisms which are well worth reading. And I think they're worth reading because to this very day, the criticisms Harrison makes of Garvey or of Du Bois or of Booker T. Washington, they oftentimes put him, on the outside of very powerful people, but they're a type of forthright criticism that still are needed today. People are still dealing with many of these issues. I'm sorry.
We're having a conversation with Jeffrey Perry. Dr. Jeffrey Perry is he's a biographer. He's written biographies, but this particular biography has to do with a guy called Hubert Harrison that is not often talked about. And we invited him today to share with us his work. And he's talking about, again, the guy's name is Hubert Harrison. The thing I see here is that he seemed to be having some difficulties in relationship with Garvey and Du Bois. Did he ever get along with other? Was he his own person, or I see some conflict he had here with Du Bois and with Garvey and with a couple of others? So what was this?
Oh, you're right. Very, very briefly, Harrison would often speak his own mind. This was something that was nurtured in those lyceums he involved in 1905 with Schomburg and Bruce, and that carried through his life. So at various points, he would criticize Theodore Roosevelt, William Howard Taft, Woodrow Wilson. He had criticized leaders of the AFL-CIO, or the AFL at that time, of the other labor leaders, other socialist leaders, subsequently communist leaders. And he openly criticized the big three black leaders of his lifetime, Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, and Marcus Garvey. So these are some reasons he's not better known. Other reasons he's not better known, he was poor, he was very black, he was very dark-skinned, he was an immigrant, he was working class, he was from the Caribbean, he had no long-lasting organizational ties. He was a radical on race, class, and religion, and it's also got to do with how history is written, which is a much deeper subject, which we can talk about at some point if you want. But that's in brief. That's some of the reasons why he's not better known.
If you just joined us, we're having a conversation with Dr. Jeffrey Perry. Dr. Jeffrey Perry's biography has written 2 volumes of biography on one of African-American great thinkers or writers whose name is Hubert Harrison. You can give us a call here at 215-634-8065, our number, 215-634-8065, WURD 900 AM. We're also on 96.1 FM. You can see us on Facebook, I think, and other social media here. Hubert Harrison. So Hubert Harrison lived for how many years again now, Dr. Jeffrey Perry? How old?
40. He lives to be 44 and dies unexpectedly. And I just wanted to mention one other thing. His grandson, Ray Richardson, carried on in the family tradition, and he was a very progressive TV producer and host in Boston in the late 60s, early 70s. And he dies under very suspicious conditions in Mexico after his show is taken off the air because of its militancy. And I have a couple of articles on Ray Richardson on the Black Agenda Report and on Black Star News, if people want to look for them.
Dr. Jeffrey Perry, who has written a couple of books about Hubert Harrison. And you say Hubert Harrison is not known that much now, history books, and you're doing such a great work to bring him up to light here because of his disagreements with some key African-American leaders in those days. Rogers, J.A. Rogers, you said, did they get along together? I mean, did they work together?
Yeah, Rogers was best of friends with Harrison. He respected him totally. And in his book, World's Great Men of Color, he has a stunningly good chapter on Harrison amidst chapters on Booker T. Washington, W.E.B. Du Bois, William Monroe Trotter, and Marcus Garvey. And it was Rogers' article that prompted me to start looking to find out who was Hubert Harrison. And I've worked for 39 years on it. But Rogers says something very profound, and I include this in my introduction to the second volume. He says, it's in a longer passage, but he says, no man is perfect to his valet, but this should not deny the essential greatness of Hubert Harrison. He considered Harrison extraordinary, but he wasn't blind, and we get the same thing from Eugene O'Neill and other writers. And in the introduction, I try and explain when I'm writing this biography, it's not to just glorify Harrison. I let him stand on his own, and I put him out there with his positions, whether I agree with them or not, because I think they're important for people to assess and to judge and to draw from and to build off, or criticize. And so I think you and your audience will have much to profit in looking at these Harrison, much to profit from in looking at these Harrison biographies.
Dr. Jeffrey Perry, biographer of Hubert Harrison, a great, great African-American intellectual who did so much, fought intensely for the liberation of black people in this culture. We're going to go to Chicago, where we have Brother X waiting patiently to have a conversation with you. Brother X, you are on line one. Welcome to the show.
Oh, well, thank you there, young fella. You're having a good show, you and your guest there.
Thank you.
I just want to make a comment about Garvey. To me, the main threat of Garvey movement was the survival of Africa and Africans here in America. Garvey said, if we did not go back and reclaim Africa for us and the Africans, if we did not do that, the white man was going to do away with us here in America, and then he was going to do away with the Africans. It is going down exactly as Garvey predicted it would. We're coming up on about 100 years since Garvey's death, and 100 years is usually a time limit of the gap between when the next people on Earth are exterminated. That's where we are right now. This is what we're seeing going down in this country right now. We can try to ignore it all we want. This stuff is going to keep picking up. It's going to get worse and worse, the same way it did in Germany and Italy. That's what they do. They keep edging you up, up, up to the big bubble. We did not do what Garvey said, and we're going to pay dearly for it. But the white man stopped Garvey because he knew that was our answer. That was the only answer for the slaves here and abroad.
Brother X, you're a Garveyite, I take it, right?
Well, I don't know what you mean by Garvey. I agree with Garvey's philosophy and what he was trying to accomplish. I don't know what you mean by Garveyite.
A follower of the philosophy of Marcus Garvey, essentially, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I follow his philosophy. I agree with it. I think it's the only solution. It was like the Titanic. You either stay on or you get off. For the Africans here, you can see it now. Y'all see it. These people assassinating us every day all across this country. And the thing that just went down in Washington, them the same people blew up the World Trade Center. They was behind the stuff in Washington. All this stuff is a setup. They blew up the building in Oklahoma. They are creating an atmosphere. Pay attention what they're doing. It's real simple. They are creating an atmosphere in this country where black people can be slaughtered.
Thank you. Thank you for your call, Brother X from Chicago. Thank you for your call. Appreciate that. We're going to have to go on a short break, and then we'll have some time for Professor Perry to make a comment on that, and then we're going to go to Germany, Rick in Germany. Thank you, Brother X, for your call. Appreciate this. A short break. We'll be right back.
Parents, teachers, guardians, 100 Black Men of Philadelphia offers a free mentoring program for boys in 1st through 12th grades every 1st and 3rd Saturday. Students will engage in age-appropriate youth development, career exploration, critical thinking, and leadership activities. Students can earn monthly stipends for participation and are eligible for electronic gift cards, prizes, and scholarships. Register today at www.100blackmenphilly.org or call 267-258-2900.
Are you tired of eating the same thing day after day? Is ordering takeout starting to get a little old? If so, then give Premium Nutrition Meals a try. With Premium Nutrition Meals, you get to select new entrees each week from several different menus, all chef-crafted, freshly prepared, and delivered right to your door. Just go to PremiumNutritionMeals.com to order to earn rewards today. WURD listeners receive $10 off orders of 6 meals or more. Enter code PREMIUMWURD at checkout.
My mother was always very active and independent, and she was familiar with her neighborhood. But one day, she stopped at the stop sign for much longer than usual. She wasn't even really sure where she was at.
It's important for you to talk to someone about it. I felt so much better after my son told me, Mom, we'll figure it out.
When something feels different, it could be Alzheimer's. Now is the time to talk. Visit alz.org/ourstories to learn more. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
You're listening to WURD Radio, 96.1 FM and 900 AM WURD, independent black media.
And we're back. It's the Dr. Emeka Show. If it is 1 o'clock, I'm here, God willing, having a conversation with you. We try to educate our community because I think lack of education can be a problem in every community. I'm Dr. Emeka. On today's edition of the show, Black History Month, we have a biographer with us, biographer who has written 2 books on one particular African-American who's made a profound contribution to the liberation of black people. His name is Hubert Harrison. Dr. Jeffrey Perry is that individual. Before the break, Dr. Perry, did you have a comment before we go to Rick in Germany?
Brother X, I thought it was Brother X. Was it Brother X?
Yes.
I think. Yes, I did, and I thought he made some very interesting points. So let me just briefly go over some of these. First, just to the latter part of his comment, I myself am a victim of 9/11. I've got some serious health issues. I worked in Lower Manhattan. I don't believe any of the official government stories on what happened there. I grew up in the era of the Vietnam War. I don't believe about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. And you can see the Secretary of State McNamara on a YouTube video acknowledging it was made up. I never believed the weapons of mass destruction when that was the issue for going into the Mideast. So I think there's reason to question and challenge all of that. Regarding the more fundamental question he was raising earlier about Garvey and Harrison, some of Harrison's philosophical, if you will, differences with Garvey included in Garvey's program and aims, as first elaborated in 1914 and later continued. One of his aims was civilizing the peoples of Africa. And Harrison was opposed to that. He thought it was kind of arrogant. He argued we have much to learn from the people of Africa. And, our approach should be much humbler, and we should go with the approach to learn from, not to try and civilize. Another difference Harrison had was
so Garvey was out. One of Garvey's philosophy was to go to Africa and civilize Africans.
Well, that was in his aims, his stated aims and objectives. And objects. There were 14 of them. He also put forth the title of his organization's name went through various names, but one was Imperialist League. And you have to understand, Harrison was very strongly anti-imperialist. He was radically anti-imperialist. But in saying all that, please don't lose sight of what I quoted in the beginning, Richard B. Moore, one of his contemporaries, who knew Harrison very well, who said Harrison was above all his contemporaries in emphasizing that a vital aim was the liberation of the oppressed African and other colonial peoples.
I see.
Because of all this, I think Brother X would appreciate reading Harrison and seeing what he has to say and judging, for himself, weighing it against what he knows and thinks, and see if he has more to contribute and add. Again, the books are put out there for people to build off, develop, etc.
Okay, we are having a conversation with Dr. Jeffrey Perry. He's a writer, a biographer, actually, written about 2 volumes of biography on this great African-American thinker, writer, whose name is Hubert Harrison. If you want to join us with our conversation or ask him some questions, our number here is 215-634-8065. It's WURD 900 AM. We have to go to Germany, Dr. Perry. In Germany, we have Rick, who is waiting to have a conversation with you, Dr. Perry. Rick, welcome to the show.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
I have a simple question. Agribusiness and sharecropping during this man's lifetime. What did he think of agribusiness, American agribusiness, and sharecropping among Negroes and those few Native Americans who could endure the work? And was the Department of Agriculture a force during his lifetime?
Interesting question from Germany. Rick, thanks for your call. Let's go to the expert here. Dr. Perry?
Well, yeah, and thank you for your question. Harrison was very critical of the relations of production, if you will, particularly down south, and he really struggled and advocated for African Americans, for Negroes, to come together and work collectively, particularly in his last organization, the International Colored Unity League, which was founded in 1924 to 1927. It was much more broadly unitary, and he put forth calls for cooperative farming, working, in other areas, setting up scholarships, just a whole different approach for black people coming together. He even proposed the idea for consideration of black people setting up a separate state or states in the far west where they didn't necessarily, not that people had to go there nor they were going to kick people out, but it was where people of African descent could, come together and create and let their own energies shine forth. He believed that, again, and getting back to this equality question, he believed at the very core, if African Americans, if Negroes were treated with equality and justice, these were the issues that he constantly hit on, that they would be capable of developing solutions and resolutions for their current situation, and they could take care of things themselves. He also, of course, just one other thing, he was an opponent of armed self-defense if they're under attack. He was very militant, Go on, sorry.
Hubert Harrison, great African-American thinker, who's actually more like a Renaissance. I mean, there's all corners of human endeavor this person gotten into. We have a call now from Olney. Olney, the guy that lives in Olney in his big mansion, his name is Jacob. Welcome to the show, Jacob.
Peace be unto you, Dr. Emeka, and to the other doctor there. Peace be unto you. Yeah. Hey, Doc, I am sitting on my throne over here because I feel like a king. But I'm going to just put it like this. Out of all that I've heard, am I wrong to think like one of our most recent ancestors, Maya Angelou, said, I'll say this, still we rise. Out of everything I've read about and heard about in this 400-year struggle in this land, am I wrong for saying, I'll add it all up and say, you know what, still we rise? I ain't wrong for that, am I, Doc?
I don't think so at all. Okay. I think we struggle forward. Harrison wrote something very interesting in his in the year before he died. He said something, I'm paraphrasing, but he says, wherever I would be in this world, I would be protesting against injustice on behalf of the people. You got to keep struggling. And without going into great detail of my own personal experience, I spent 33 years in the labor movement, in which I tried as best I could with others to put in the context of those class struggles, the struggle against white supremacy is central. And we had some very remarkably good success and progress, a story which still much of it has to be told because the union still comes after me. But that gives me faith that this is possible because I've seen how it can work. The effective struggle against white supremacy and for equality can push things forward. One more thing. If I can, my webpage is www.jeffreybperry.net. All kinds of free information.
Thank you, Jacob, for your call. Appreciate this. We're having a conversation with Dr. Jeffrey Perry. He's a writer who's written 2 volumes on one unknown African-American thinker who's also an activist in the struggle for liberation of black people in this country. His name is Hubert Harrison. And we are on 215-634-8065. That's our number. Obviously, if you want to call us, give us a call here. Jeffrey Perry, so how can one have access to the volumes by this great intellectual, great African-American thinker? How do people get access to the books?
Thank you so very much for asking. The 2 books, Hubert Harrison, The Struggle for Equality, 1918 to 1927, and Hubert Harrison, The Voice of Harlem Radicalism, 1883 to 1918, can be obtained from Columbia University Press. If you go to their website and you use this code, CUP20, it stands for Columbia University Press 20. If you use that code, you get 20% discount. So I think that's the best place to get those books now, and you can get the book in hardbound, paperback, or EPUB, an ebook, right? Also the book Hubert Harrison Reader is available from Wesleyan University Press. These are all available from Amazon too, but the Columbia discount is very good for the Columbia books. And I did another very interesting book, which I think people would appreciate. I edited Hubert Harrison's book, When Africa Awakes, the inside story of the stirrings and strivings of the new Negro in the Western world, which was published in 1920. I did an updated edition in 2015 for Diasporic Africa Press. And I did much new introductions and supplemental notes, and that can be got directly from Diasporic Africa Press.
Very good. I've been given a signal here that we have to go. And I just want to thank you so very much, Dr. Perry, Jeffrey Perry, for being our guest today to talk to us about this unsung hero, Hubert Harrison. Thank you for the great work you've been doing, and we will try to purchase those books from my university library, by the way. And folks, if you want to get a copy of that, Columbia University Press, Hubert Harrison, H-U-B-E-R-T, Harrison, H-A-R-R-I-S-O-N. Join us next week when we have another. Dr. Perry, thank you so much for taking time to be with us today. We appreciate that.
Thank you, Dr. Mecca, and thank you for your wonderful international audience.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, sir, and we'll be in touch. That's it for the show, folks. Next week, we have Hugh Masekela, the musician, internationally renowned musician. Will be our Hugh Masekela passed away, by the way, but an expert on Hugh Masekela, the great musician, will be our guest next week. So don't forget to join us again. And until next week, when we have another edition, which is Hugh Masekela, who has been in Philadelphia actually on many occasions. Until next week, when we have another edition of the Dr. Emeka Show, I said to you, take good care of yourselves. Very important at this COVID period. And above all, if you see someone with that compassion, please give him or her one of yours, because it's the right thing to do. I'll see you next week. And Mike, thanks for being the great engineer you've always been. I appreciate that. Take good care, folks. Bye-bye.